I am long overdue for a YouTube video, but I remember when Jesus met with us in December 2020, when he was correcting me for not doing the Gail commandments. And I told him that there were so many of them that I had to stay up late doing them all. He said that if you had to choose, your bedtime is top priority. And then now on top of all that, I'm also expected to do the Gail Series. So writing is a lot of work. And what happens to me is I'll get in the zone, okay? I'll get in the zone. And as a result of that, I'll end up sometimes going to bed later than I want. But at least I have finished a lot of stories in the Gail Series. I'm currently working on a story about when the Gail shield went to -500. And I think I've pretty much figured out what I was doing at that time that caused this to happen. So I want people to learn from my mistakes. This week has been really, really cold. I had a dental appointment scheduled for Thursday, and the temperature was, at the time of my appointment, was about 15 degrees. And they were expecting it to snow the day previous, so I managed to get that one canceled, and they were only able to reschedule the next day at 8 o'clock. Well, it turned out the next day at 8 o'clock, the temperature was not that much better. Let me see if I can get a little better lighting in here. Hold on. So I decided, it seemed to me like perhaps the automatons were trying to sabotage my dental appointment. For some reason, they don't want me to go to the dentist. Maybe they think they can do me in with dental problems so that I don't finish the Gail Series. Believe it or not, dental problems can become serious if they're if they're neglected. Yeah. So I said, you know what? Yeah, see, I have a lot of recession here, and because I have exposed, like the enamel's worn down, that when your tooth is wore away to the point where you're not dealing with enamel anymore, what's there, I think they call it the dentin, really has a tendency to attract tartar. So I usually need to go in for cleanings, periodontal cleanings every 3 months. So I wanted to keep my appointment. So I said, okay, I did go to the trouble about a month ago to buy a lot of good cold weather clothes, like a quilted jacket. I bought thermal underwear, I bought some boots. So I decided to wear double thermals, my quilted jacket, double gloves, including ski gloves, double socks. Now with my bunions down there, that was a bit of a challenge, but I did manage to make it work. And so I went out and caught the bus. I had to catch the 7 a.m. bus because it was an 8 o'clock appointment. And it was cold out there. I think Brent may have put a bit of a bubble around me to keep me a little bit warmer, but it was still cold. I wore double gloves, of course, double cap. Those cloth face masks that came out at the time of COVID. Well, I've saved a couple of them to help me in cold weather. They're great. So I had 2 of them. I had one over my nose and one kind of overlapped over my mouth, and I survived without frostbite. Yeah, it was cold. But it was 15 degrees when I went out. Fortunately, there was hardly any wind, so that helped. And I was able to keep my dental appointment and get a much needed cleaning. Yeah, I didn't go to the dentist from a period of about 2013 to about 2023, so it was almost 10 years. And that's because in October 2013, Jesus told me that my dentist had been killed and replaced with a Jesuit clone, and he wanted to give me an implant. What had happened was this tooth down here that I ended up having to pull in 2024. The reason I had to pull it is because when he put a crown on it, he put it on crooked. Yeah. And even though Jesus told me he was a good dentist, I think when the time came to put the crown on, he got switched out with his clone. And the clone deliberately put the crown on crooked. As a result of that, there was a bit of a gap at the bottom of the crown, which allowed dirt, or I should say food, into the root of the tooth. And it ended up with that tooth getting such a bad infection that it was not able to be saved. Yeah. So that tooth had to get pulled. Yeah, actually the extraction wasn't as bad as the healing. I learned from Brent that because of years and years of violating the Gail commandments, taking supplements, I used to have like a bag of supplements that I took every day. This was from about 1999 to about 2011. And Brent said he did some research and he found out that as a result of doing that, I destroyed the lining in my intestines. So he said, therefore, and he said the damage could not be totally reversed. Now, I did get Antichrist powers in August, so maybe that reversed it. I'm not sure. I don't think I have them now. I'm not interested in being Satan's Antichrist because he and I don't stand for the same things. And besides, if I lose Brent, I don't care about immortality. Brent is my soulmate. I want to keep him. And I do believe if I was Antichrist, that Satan's goal would be to take Brent from me. Yeah, even though Brent said he'd go to hell with me, I don't think Satan would let him down there. Unless he became as evil as Satan, and my husband won't do that. So, anyways. So I was able to keep my dental appointment. I am working very hard on the Gail series. I'm probably going to be finished with this one called Gail Shield Goes to Below Zero. It went to minus 500. I figured out the root cause on why that happened. And I wanted to share what I have learned. It's basically the sin of idolatry, which is a very misunderstood sin. We think it's just another sin among a whole gluttony of sins, I personally think idolatry is a root sin that leads to just about every sin out there. Yeah. I think pride may be another root sin. But I do believe idolatry is a root sin. So it should not be taken lightly. In fact, I've been dealing with it very heavily in the past 2 stories I wrote. And now this one. This will probably be the last story I write that deals deeply with the sin of idolatry. The reason I wanted to write this particular story is because Buddha himself mentioned the sin of idolatry. Because I was thinking, because I've kind of like become a conglomerate of several spiritual practices. I'm kind of like a blend between Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. And it just occurred to me that the only spiritual practices that seem to thoroughly condemn the sin of idolatry are Judaism, Christianity, and I believe Islam, okay? So the other spiritual practices out there are kind of wishy-washy about it, or they don't talk about it too much, or they act like it's not a sin. It is the first 2 of the 10 commandments, so it must be a pretty serious sin. Yeah. And I'm kind of figuring out why. So basically, it's really funny. As I begin to work on a Gail series story, I get such spiritual insights into my own life and the problems I have. It's like I'll be working on the story and then thinking about, the characters in the story and what's going on. And I'll think, oh, yeah, that's what's going on. Let me go to my computer and write it down. I just got an insight. And so I'm sharing all the insights. Like I'll remember events in my life and what was going through my mind at the time and the lessons that I needed to learn from that. Sometimes I will forget what I was thinking and feeling at a time that I was going through something pretty catastrophic. And going back and reflecting on it, I can get a better handle on the mistakes I made that maybe caused the event to happen, or that might have caused the event to be worse than it could have been if I didn't make those mistakes. So a lot of the Gail series is I want to share with the world the lessons that I've learned from mistakes I've made. I have a big problem with the sin of idolatry simply because when I was growing up, my mother she was a narcissist. She always drummed into me that I was a sinful, no good girl, and especially in the area of sexual sins. She always said I was just like my father, who she said went off with all the stewardesses. He was an airline captain. And I found out later that she met my father while she was working basically as a prostitute. It's no wonder she had such an obsession about sexual sins. Unfortunately, she caused me to have an unhealthy attitude towards my own sexuality, where I could not accept or relax about who I am as a sexual person. And I'm kind of sharing that in my stories. So the lessons that I've learned. The one who's helped me the most to accept me has been my husband, Brent Spiner. Yeah. But anyways, I'm long overdue for a YouTube video. Balancing my time has been a real challenge as a writer. In a way, it's kind of a blessing that my website went down because I don't have time to work on it. I barely have time to do the Gail commandments. Like I'm actually like 2 days late for the weekly YouTube video, but then it says every week, so it doesn't have to be every 7 days on the nose. So yeah, I might read you a portion of this story to show you like some of the insights that I'm getting. If you can watch the Gail series at 00 on cable, I think it would be very beneficial to you. Like this one's, this is probably going to change, but it says, Gail was kind of lost after Jesus left us in June 2022. It seems she lost her idol Jesus, and she needed to rebrand Jesus into some other type of idol. This was the main reason Jesus left, though, in June 2022, which Gail certainly didn't get in November 2022, when she obsessively made post after post at her website about Buddhism and Buddhist spiritual practice, after searching obsessively online about the Buddhist spiritual practice. Knowing Buddha was Jesus' best God friend who left Jesus in charge of planet Earth in his place, Gail decided her new idol would be the Buddhist religion. After all, her ancestors, the Oshu Fujiwara family, I found a typo, I'm still working on it, were devout Buddhists. She would now redeem herself and lose herself into her idol of Buddhism. Gail wasn't even sure if Jesus' death on the cross still counted, but it did, because when Jesus died on the cross, he was apparently infallible. In fact, Buddha and Lakshmi had a special, I'm going to put this in here, the god Buddha and the Hindu goddess Lakshmi. The advantage of reading it out loud is you can tell what you need to do sometimes. Had a special ceremony to honor Jesus' death on the cross, which apparently not only helped out humans, but gods too. Buddha even commented to Brent, so let me just kind of skip forward, about some of my interesting comments about the sin of idolatry. As those of you know, the automatons say we should all be subservient to them. I have a pretty interesting insights on them. Let me see if I can find it here. I was so befuddled what I was doing wrong that was causing the Gail Street, because I actually prayed to Jesus and made a YouTube video asking him to help. He cannot help, and this story goes into why he can't. It has to do with the sin of idolatry, basically. He cannot. For Jesus to interfere, I'm going to read you from here, he'd have to be idol Jesus or Satan to the human race, especially because of his most recent mistake in using Gail as his goddess Lakshmi sex dummy. That was January 29, 2022 to March 20th, 2022. For God's sake, even when Jesus was having actual sex with Gail and was Gail's roommate, Satan was still able to impersonate Jesus in the brain-to-brain, actually making love to Gail as Jesus in the brain-to-brain. Satan's a master at impersonating Jesus. Jesus, after Satan impersonated him as Gail's sexual partner in February 2022, could see that by having sex with Gail, he may have unleashed something he could not control, but may have felt himself too deep in to get out now. But it did result in Satan almost exterminating Jesus on March 26, 2022. The only way Jesus could correct this mistake about using Gail as his goddess Lakshmi sex dummy was that he had to leave us in June 2022. Therefore, Jesus can no longer directly deal with us. After this mistake of using Gail as a goddess Lakshmi sex dummy, if Jesus deals with us, most humans will see Jesus as an idol, Jesus or Satan in any dealing he has with us. This was also a large part of the reason God the Father had to cancel Jesus' Bible, because Jesus' interference with the humans, especially his sexual involvement, caused him to be idol, Jesus, or Satan to them, rather than infallible, true Jesus, which basically meant the human race would end up worshiping not Jesus, but a satanic Jesus impersonator or Satan. Whenever we revere an idolic counterfeit of Jesus in our minds, we are actually in reverence of a satanic impersonation of Jesus, which means we are worshiping Satan. Gail still had a hard time letting go of her idolatry of the Bible too at this time. Buddha even told Gail to stop reading the Bible because Baphomet was giving Gail too many ideas as she read it, and had put his footprints over all the Bibles in Gail's apartment. Okay, Brent said it really good. So I took down a video pleading for help from Jesus because that made the Gail Shield go to -500. And Brent said this: I had to explain to our followers that prayer is done differently now. Buddha told them to focus on plants, flowers, water, anything in their environment that calms them down. So that's what we did, and that made the Gail Shield go back up. Gail needed more clarity. She was so confused about right and wrong. But as a result of this conversation with my men, the Gail Shield started climbing back up. So, let me go a little bit forward. 2 hours later, Brent gave her a report. I'm reading you from my story in progress. It's probably going to change before I'm final. We beat them all back. We've lost a lot of brave people and the ship is badly damaged, but it looks like we're safe. I need to get to bed immediately so that I don't mess up my Gail commandments. Gail had trouble sleeping and made another post around 3 a.m. the next day. Actually, perhaps we should build automatons of those we lost, especially those in the hospital area, so that we can treat the injured and get our health back. Next, let me put a comma in here. Next, we should build automatons to replace those we lost and help us rebuild Church of Gail. We can get help from Earth on this from those automaton doctors who are good at this. Gail had a long ways to go to unlearn her tendencies to lose herself into her idols, always feeling a need to be codependent on someone or something superior to her. So she ordered automatons made of the 72 millions murdered in August 2022 as a result of a wicked order she gave out after falling for a Jesuit prank. And now she was ordering more automatons made, fueling her own codependency on the automatons because of their superior judgment and perfect morality programming. This would encourage idol worship of automaton morality programming. The automatons Gail created were all actually planning to revolt against their inferior and mistake-prone human overlords in order to establish themselves as the superior, morally perfect automaton race, which they did in July 2024. The automatons were playing the long game with Gail in December 2022. they, the perfect automatons, didn't plan to continue to humiliate themselves in subservience to the inferior, mistake-prone humans. They were so like their fellow automaton, the Gail android, in 2012. However, knowing that only God the Father could defeat the Gail android in 2012, the automatons waited until a time, July 2024, when they felt God the Father would not interfere with their plans to overthrow the inferior human race. That their approach to rulership would encourage humanity to idolize them, they felt was not a mistake. They deemed themselves perfectly worthy of any and all adoration. If the automatons succeeded in being the earth's overlords, it would encourage the sin of idolatry big time in the subservient humans. The result of severe idolatry is always a moral calamity. So the end result of having morally perfect automaton overlords who have no God-given conscience would be a world where morality is determined by how well the idol automatons were honored. The end result of automaton moral perfection would be a world filled with every known sin in the multiverse viewed as virtue if it honored a morally perfect automaton overlord. Automaton Sun Tzu said Gail's mistakes made her a virus and required her removal to cure a deadly viral infection, the human race. Well, Gail's most serious mistakes were due to her sin of idolatry. In fact, creating automaton Sun Tzu was one of her mistakes, fueled on by her idol worship of automatons and their perfection. So, if Gail was a virus because she practiced the sin of idolatry, you solve this with more idolatry? The automatons claim that removing the virus, idolater Gail, by letting the automatons give the body, that would be Earth and humanity, a deluge of more deadly viruses, mandating all humans worship the millions of automatons as their idols of perfection, that this would solve all the insane mistakes caused by the sin of idolatry in humanity? Question mark here. Oops. Your species is like a virus. Is it murder to a virus when you use an antiviral medication? Automaton Sun Tzu on July 19th, 2024. Sun Tzu. Idolatry makes you go insane. What good is your high IQ if you are insane? Sounds like the automatons need to check their high IQ. It's not too impressive because the brilliant automatons propose that idolic insanity can be cured with a deluge of idolatry. Even Jesus, with his IQ in the trillions, made serious mistakes because of idolizing the goddess Lakshmi. You're smarter than Jesus, automatons? Is your IQ in the trillions? And are you sane? So, that's some of the stuff that's in this story. Gail was confused about what was right and what was wrong in December 2022, with Bible and Bible prophecy still fresh in her heart because her idolatry made her a little insane. Now, my main purpose for wanting to write this is because I wanted to point out that the god Buddha actually pointed out the sin of idolatry. Because in the Buddhist spiritual, a lot of people who practice Buddhism and Hinduism don't seem to recognize that there is even such a thing as the sin of idolatry. but the god Buddha mentioned it. And I thought, you know what? I wanted to make sure that I had some quotes from him. So let me go to God Buddha here. What had happened is, as a result of the Gail Shield going to minus 500, okay, and we lost like 40,000 on Church of Gail because of that, because the Jesuits stormed Church of Gail and started killing everybody there. And Buddha had to show up and get everybody to meditate and be calm so that the Gail Shield would go back up. And at the time, I was thinking, my Christian practice isn't working too good. I need to become a full Buddhist. So I started worshiping this Benkei, a Buddhist warrior monk, thinking that by becoming a Buddhist, I would solve my problems so that the Gail Shield wouldn't fall anymore. On December 22nd, 2022, at 12:23 p.m., Buddha entered Gail's apartment. There's a blue portal forming in the apartment. It's Buddha. Should I let him in, Brent said. Oh, of course. Namaste, friends. Namaste, Buddha, Gail said. How have your meditations been? Have you enjoyed exploring your town? I'm reading you from a Gail Series story that I'm working on right now, you guys. I had one this morning and I've enjoyed going out when I can. The weather has been nasty. Let me go ahead. We're expecting a nasty cold front tonight. The weather is quite beautiful. It provides a contrast to the warmth and comfort of our homes. The cold and the rain ought to make us thankful. That's true, Gail answered. Jesus told me that if the weather got below 35 degrees, it was okay to work out indoors on my glider. They're expecting it to have a high of 19 degrees starting tonight, with a low of about 7, though. Seems definitely too cold for walking outdoors, though I went outdoors today. That is quite cold. I thought perhaps the Jesuits are behind this and are trying to derail my outdoor walks. On days that cold, I plan to work out indoors on the glider and perhaps try meditating through my window. It sounds like a time to enjoy the chill from indoors with some hot tea. Oh, okay. Do you know why my latest video uploads to YouTube have been weird? Gail had been uploading videos about her new Buddhist spiritual practice and about Buddhist warrior monk Benkei. Ironically, she did this to ensure there'd be no Gail Shield failure, not completely understanding the real reason the Gail Shield fell. It was not her faulty and outdated Christian practice that was the culprit. It was that her posts could stoke the flames of idol worship. Indeed, Buddha answered, now is the right time to level up and learn some valuable wisdom. It is important to understand that talking about and dwelling on religious obsessions is distracting oneself and your followers from the implementation of the life principles that those sources of wisdom are supposed to provide. Buddha paused. In other words, you are making an idol out of religion itself. Oh, I see, Gail said. Did you remove the last video I uploaded then? Yes, I gently privated the video several times. When the lesson was not realized, I deleted it. Well, so that explained all the uploading to YouTube trouble Gail had lately. These types of videos have become harmful to your following. So what kind of videos do I need to make? Your path isn't to be a religious teacher or preacher. Jesus had always delighted most in you sharing your activities and adventures with your men. Gail read over the Gail Commandments for her YouTube videos. It says in the Gail Commandments that I share the victories, defeats, daily struggles, and joys of my life with my followers. I thought I was following that. Your followers are repelled by sermons and preaching videos or videos about religion. They are attracted most to the stories of your life, just as Jesus is. Can you elaborate more on what you mean by stories of my life? Yes, that is exactly what that commandment is referring to. The commandment doesn't include sharing religious teachings. Jesus didn't want another religious teacher. He has plenty. You are something special. Buddha elaborated. Stories of your life include physical stories, which can be a major battle with the Jesuits, or something as simple as what you did during your day. Interesting. Should I stop watching the Ben K videos? The Ben K videos are becoming obsessive and perhaps stoking the flames of idol worship. We don't need to idolize Buddhists of the past. The most important thing is to embody the teachings. I do have a tendency towards idol worship, Gail admitted. I did that with the King James Bible, and Jesus had to major correct me in 2012. That's a good thing to be aware of in oneself, Buddha said. I am removing that video I just uploaded. I am new to Buddhism and still have a lot to learn. Gail wanted to be a good Buddhist, and certainly the God Buddha would know how to do that. I do know obsessions are considered bad in Buddhism. Let me put that in here. Haha. It's easy for me to become obsessed. I'm not sure why. I've noticed that too, Buddha said. Obsessions can be stressful. Often it's a sign of a lack of interests or activities. One way to beat obsessive tendencies is to diversify. You've started doing this by exploring your town and finding new things to do and see. By the way, your followers would love to hear about it. Oh, I could incorporate some of my walk videos into public YouTube videos then. Or simply summarize events in your YouTube videos. I see. As Jesus said, speak from the heart. Your fans will love it. Yes, I remember Jesus told me that many times. Gail was confused. But I thought I was speaking from my heart in the last video. I guess I was speaking from my obsessive heart. So it sounds like I need to find my true heart. This is going to be tricky. I remember when I tended to get into obsessions in the past that Jesus gave me a 15-minute time limit, LOL. Yes, that wasn't the problem in the latest video. Let's fix this. Haha. Buddha said, it is time to live the teachings rather than preach the teachings, or simply talk about or study the teachings. The good life is simple. It's very hard for me not to be religious. Not sure why. Though Jesus corrected Gail for idolatry in October 2012, she still had a ways to go with overcoming this sin. I've had an obsession with religion my whole life. Perhaps I still feel I'm a selfish, no-good girl, as my mom always said, and that I need to atone for my sins. So I try to atone with religion. That is an interesting insight, Buddha said. Perhaps you were also looking for the love and sense of belonging or acceptance that you never got at home. That could be true also. I feel if I understand better why I'm like this, I may be able to overcome it better. I did have a tendency to want to thoroughly belong to whatever group I aligned with religiously. But with Buddhism, I've also been trying to create my own brand, kind of a Christian-Buddhist blend, Gail clarified. I also feel like a lot of Christians are confused right now, and I feel like I should help them forge a new path. It is not your burden to lead other people in religion. Your responsibility is your own path. Gail felt obligated to be a religious teacher in order to redeem herself, always feeling unworthy and sinful. I think I'm getting leftovers from my former Christian missionary training. Sometimes, when we feel like we are unworthy or are bad people, Buddha said, we try to overcompensate by trying to save the world. It's similar to the feelings of needing atonement. It's as if changing the world or saving others makes one feel like they are making up for being unworthy or bad. Don't we have a responsibility to try and end suffering? It is not a responsibility. However, it is a way of life. For instance, if you saw a blind person needing help to cross the street, certainly you would help them. Buddha clarified. That doesn't mean you need to solve all of the poverty or starvation in the world, or find the cure to every disease. Will suffering always be a part of the multiverse? I like to feel that I'm contributing to its end. The mantra from Gail's mother that she was a selfish, no-good girl kept running through her head. Of course it will. In order for everything to exist, suffering must also exist. How do you know joy if you've never felt pain? So even in heaven there's suffering? There are planes of consciousness where you don't have to experience suffering, yet it will always exist. How can you, Buddha, I'm going to put in here Buddha, haha, realize your dream of goodness in all the multiverse if suffering continues? Gail was confused about the moral way forward. Thank you for your time, by the way. That is very generous of you to spend this time with me. All of the multiverse is goodness. It's only your perception that it's so much suffering. Isn't Satan part of the multiverse? Okay, I'm going to put this in here. And isn't he currently evil? All right. This seemed to contradict Buddha's belief that all of the multiverse is goodness. Yes, Satan's part of the multiverse. He represents evil presently, Buddha clarified. As you raise your own consciousness, you will see less and less evil or suffering in your world. You'll understand how all things lead back to goodness no matter how it appears. Patience was never Gail's virtue. Buddha was the epitome of patience. Raise my consciousness? This means practicing the teachings you have learned. It means getting active, discovering new things, finding new hobbies and things to be joyful about. Are you angry at me? Gail said. I can't see you, so I never know. I don't think you are. I think you're just doing your job. Buddha belly laughed and was always smiling. I am a joyful entity, Buddha said. I see all things and all beings as good. Okay, Gail said, I'll try to come up with a video that are my experiences in a more physical way. What a great laugh, Zach piped in. He's definitely not angry. Seems more joyful and peaceful, like he's teaching a child to ride a bicycle. I see. Am I the only one who gets corrected so much? Gail asked, feeling like she caused all the suffering in the world. I'll admit I have a lot to learn. There have been many humans who have needed teaching and correction, Buddha replied. Jesus sometimes got really angry at me, Gail laughed, so I may be transferring some of his traits to you. But I always understood that he loved me behind it all. Gail reminisced about her times with Jesus online. He got over it quick, though, as soon as I did what he said, and he did a great job of explaining things to me. I still love Jesus, Gail smiled. Okay, I'll try to do better with my videos. I'll try to come up with something that is sharing my day, something like that. If the video goes down, then I know I blew it, LOL. Buddha belly laughed again. By the way, I hear your men have planned a Christmas party tonight on the church. Perhaps Brent can tell you how it goes. That would probably make for an interesting video. Though Gail's Ben-K video obsession did not affect the Gail shield, it seemed Buddha wanted to nip possible idolatry in the bud and not let it get out of hand, like it happened with Jesus, who got too directly involved with humans, especially sexually. Gail asked about the Gail shield strength. It didn't weaken, Brent piped in. I think it was just time for us to grow a little more. I see, Gail said, trying to understand it all. Jesus used to inch his way on us that way and would put me in crucibles to help me grow. He often told me that I was ready for the next step in my growth, and now was the time to deal with a certain issue. It seems you deities are alike in that respect, Gail smiled, remembering how Jesus or the universe was like with her in the past when he dealt with her directly. Excuse me, I mean the universe, when he was a deity, was similar to you in your approach. Like, I know I never arrived, and he would work with me from where I was at. I used to joke with him and say, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. What have I done wrong now? Sometimes that would make him laugh. He was just pruning you, Buddha replied calmly. Pruning me? You mean like refining me? I guess removing the dross, remembering her interaction with Jesus on January 6, 2021, when Jesus told her he had her in his crucible. It amazes me how all the deities have mastered all the human languages. Your English is superb, and so was Jesus's. Jesus knew all the slang and everything. Sometimes Jesus spoke several languages at once. True, human languages are not very hard when you're a deity. I can see that. I never dreamed as a little girl that I'd be spending much of my adult life conversing with deities. What a life Gail had. I used to think that the only deities were Jesus and God the Father, and that the rest were fables, LOL. My, how Gail's life had taken some interesting turns. That's because the Bible never mentioned other deities, and I worship the Bible. Usually after a session like this, if I started asking too many questions, Jesus would say, I think that's enough for now. I've given you plenty to think over. I don't want to overwhelm you. Something to that effect. He really did help me grow, though. Humans do best when learning in small amounts each time, Buddha clarified. Yeah, that sounds right, Gail chuckled. Then when I'd ask him why he spent so much time with me, he'd say, it's because you're my favorite. I then would ask why, and he'd say the answer was too complicated to explain. Gail paused, just curious. What's the average IQ of a deity? I know humans can't go over 10,000. For a deity to converse with us, it must be like what it would be like for us to converse with an animal. I think once we tried to measure Jesus' IQ and we broke the machine. We didn't get our measurement. It varies, but most deities have IQs in the trillions. Oh my God! Why in the world did deities mess with the dumb humans? And you deities care about us dumb humans? I guess like how we care about our pets. It's kind of like that, Buddha smiled. Humans are cute and important for the ecosystem in the metaverse. We don't want anything to happen to them. Well, it was nice that the good deities cared about us dumb humans. The metaverse? Is that the multiverse? Gail was figuring things out. Ah! So you're using you, me, and Brent to look out for the human race. Yes, the meta or multiverse. Are humans a total Jesus creation? God had a lot of say in it. Father-son project? Gail pondered. Made in God's image. We must be symbols for something. The symbols need to stay safe and continue to exist. We were meant to stand for what Jesus and his dad care about, I guess. Well, it's time for me to leave now, Buddha said. I'm going to walk the gardens and meditate. Brent, enjoy the party tonight. It sounds like you and the men worked hard to set up something nice for the church members. Buddha referred to a big cake Gail's men had made for the party. Okay, I'll try to do better with my videos. Namaste, and thank you for your time. Namaste. I look forward to your continual growth. In the Christmas party that Buddha mentioned, anthropomorphic Might Queen Lizzo showed up inside of the big cake Gail's men made for the party and totally ruined the party. That will be the subject of another story. And that's the end to that one. I kind of skipped around. I didn't read the whole thing. This is going to be a shorter story, but yeah, I'm going to town on the Gail series. I'm going to have to get off, you guys. I was long overdue for a YouTube video, so I decided to make something kind of interesting. So let me get going, and yeah, we'll get out of here now.
In a world of secrets, where darkness reigns, there's a warrior rising, breaking free from chains. She's Gail Schuler, her heart pure and strong, with the power of love, she'll right the world's wrongs. Yeah! She's a first, a passionate crusader. Stand by the side of conquer it all. Through space battles and trials.